I mean, you have to meet him, Amanda chirped, swirling her glass of something overpriced. This is Mike, just an office clerk. But he's sweet. Really sweet. She stretched the word just like it was a punchline, and the way her friend's laughter filled the rooftop space made it clear it landed exactly as intended. I stood there with my hand halfway out. One of her old sorority friends actually snorted as she leaned in and whispered something to the guy next to her, some shaggy-haired finance bro who looked like he'd confused the dress code with a Vegas pool party. Do you, do the coffee runs or just make the photocopies? Someone asked with a straight face, like I was the office pet. Amanda laughed again. He's a classic. Keeps it simple. Nothing wrong with that. I didn't laugh. I didn't answer. I smiled tightly, nodded to the group like a waiter who just got stiffed on a tip, and said, "Excuse me a moment." I walked straight past the bar, through the glass doors, down the elevator, and out onto the street. No one followed me. I didn't expect them to. Outside, the cool air smelled faintly like burnt brakes and spilled liquor. I stood on the sidewalk for a while, watching the flickering rooftop lights above. A champagne flute shattered somewhere up there, and someone let out a high-pitched scream laugh, probably Amanda. It echoed down the alley like a knife being sharpened on glass. There was no rage in me. Not yet. Just that slow, bitter pressure in the chest, the kind that builds when you realize you've been made the punchline of your own life. Again, we'd been together 6 years. I had supported her through a master's program she'd barely finished, moved apartments 3 times for her job changes, picked up the slack on bills during her sabbatical when she decided to launch something fashion-forward, which ended up being an Etsy store that sold scarves made from recycled yoga pants. I didn't complain. I didn't ask for much. She used to joke that I was like a rock, stable, dependable, boring. Tonight, she made it official. At home, I opened the door quietly. Our dog didn't even stir from the couch. The lights were off, apartment spotless from the cleaner we split, and her vision board still sat on the wall near the kitchen. Photoshopped images of magazine mansions, handbags, and a blurry screen grab of some influencer couple with power goals scribbled underneath in gold marker. On the mantel, right above the small bookshelf, was the framed photo from her graduation. Amanda in the center, arms thrown up, cap midair, the kind of smile you only have when you think the world's going to bow to your ambition. And just behind her, in the blurry background, was me, holding her coat, grinning like a fool. I pulled the frame down and turned it face down on the shelf. The silence in the apartment didn't feel calm. It felt surgical, clean, precise. I walked to my room, not ours anymore in my mind, and sat at my old desk, the one I had long stopped using because Amanda said it was too depressing to have work stuff in the shared space. I pulled open the bottom drawer. Inside was a thin black folder I hadn't touched in years. Still had the original brass clip and everything. I laid it flat, opened it, and began reading. The deed was still in my name. That building downtown where I spent my office clerk hours? My uncle left it to me 10 years ago, and I had converted it into a multi-tenant space for startups. My own corner office was just that, my favorite corner of something much larger. Amanda had never asked. She assumed. I never corrected her. At first, it was a test. Then it became a habit. Eventually, it turned into something else. Insulation. I flipped past the deed. Tax filings. Asset transfers. Insurance binders. I kept reading until the wall clock read past midnight. Her keys jangled in the lock just after 1. I didn't look up as she came in, heels clicking like applause across the floor. She didn't even glance toward the turned-down photo. She just slipped into the bedroom, dropped her purse with a thud, and said, "Ugh, you left early. You okay?" I stared at the papers in front of me. "You really shouldn't take things so seriously," she added from behind the door. "It was just a joke." I smiled faintly, not at her words, but at the line item on the financial statement in front of me. The initial funding transfer for Amanda's boutique lease. It was in both our names. Funny thing about leases tied to properties you actually own, you have options. I pulled out a pen, drew a star beside it. Then I closed the folder and opened another one labeled contingency clauses. Joke's on me, huh? Let's see how long she keeps laughing. The folder hadn't been opened in over 3 years, not because it was forgotten, but because I never thought I'd need it. It lived quietly at the bottom of my filing cabinet, sandwiched between an old set of blueprints and my uncle's obituary, both yellowed slightly at the edges. The kind of papers you keep not because you use them, but because you might, one day, need to remember where the skeletons are buried. I laid the documents out on the dining table while Amanda snored gently from the bedroom. I used to find that sound comforting. These days, It just reminded me of how easily people can sleep when they believe the world owes them a pillow. The first document was the deed. Official. Stamped. Transferred to me 8 years ago after Uncle Roland passed. No one in the family wanted the building. Too old, too many code violations, a nightmare on paper. But I took it, renovated it, split it into units. By year 3, every suite was occupied. Most tenants didn't even know I owned the place. I liked it that way. I took the corner unit for myself, kept a desk, a coffee maker, and a window that looked out over the old clock tower on 8th. I liked the quiet. I liked being anonymous. Amanda never asked about it. She thought I worked for a consulting firm. I let her. It was easier than explaining the truth to someone who only measured success in logos and follower counts. The next set of papers were financial statements. Not the flashy kind, no neon dashboards or stock tickers. Just clean, boring spreadsheets showing rental income, dividends, and monthly transfers to an LLC I'd formed in my early 30s. She never noticed those deposits. Probably thought they were paychecks from some dusty cubicle job. Then came the real gem, the contract. It was thinner than I remembered. 6 pages. Her name on the first, mine on the third. I could still see the crease where she'd folded it after begging me to sign it. Back then, she was pacing the living room in yoga pants and a bathrobe, holding up mood boards for her boutique like they were constitutional amendments. "It's just a formality," she had said. "The landlord won't approve me without a cosigner. You're reliable, they'll love that." She made reliable sound like a diagnosis. I signed. Of course I did. What she didn't know, what she never bothered to ask, was that the landlord she'd been so desperate to impress was me. I had structured the LLC under a shell corporation I kept from my uncle's days in property management. Clean, discreet, impossible to trace unless you were looking, which Amanda never was. I turned to page 4. Clause 7b, grounds for lease termination. Tenant shall not engage in conduct that brings disrepute to the property or its ownership, including but not limited to public defamation, slanderous remarks, or behavior deemed harmful to the commercial goodwill of the premises. I highlighted that. Then I opened a browser tab and watched the rooftop video again. Her voice was clearer this time, maybe because I'd muted my emotions. Mike's sweet but painfully boring. I mean, we all settle, right? More laughter. Clinking glasses. That smug tilt of her head I knew too well. I paused the clip. Then I reached for a sticky note and scribbled 3 words. Tenant. Conduct. Clause. It went right beside the lease copy. Next, I reviewed her business bank statements. She had given me access once, during a minor panic over a vendor dispute. Forgot to change the password. Rookie move. The purchases were what you'd expect. Overpriced candles, boutique labels no one wears, a recurring charge for some influencer management service. But nestled between 2 Shopify payouts was something odd, an $1,800 consultation charge from a brand studio located in Miami. Amanda hadn't mentioned a trip. I checked the date, matched it against her wellness retreat weekend in February. I remembered that trip, mostly because she came home with a spray tan and a handful of blurry group photos. No receipts, no details. I copied the transaction and stapled it to the stack. It wasn't conclusive, but it was shady. And I wasn't building a criminal case. I was building leverage. That night, I slept on the couch. Not because of a fight. Amanda was already asleep by the time I shut the files and turned off the light. She mumbled something about the algorithm hating her reels before rolling over and drifting back into whatever dreamland people like her live in, probably full of free handbags and bottomless brunches. I laid on the couch and stared at the ceiling fan. Let it spin. By morning, I'd made a list. Revoke cosigner authorization. Trigger clause 7b with timestamped video. Transfer boutique, lease to new LLC. Isolate all shared finances. It wasn't a revenge list. Not yet. It was just maintenance. She wanted to treat me like an accessory. A placeholder. A sweet little office clerk to nod and pay bills while she climbed invisible ladders. Fine. But when you climb without looking down, you tend to forget who's holding the ladder. The Italian place on 5th didn't take reservations, which was exactly why I chose it. Neutral ground. Paper tablecloths. Waiters too busy to linger. The kind of place where no one asked questions and everyone chewed too loudly to overhear anything. Still don't like tomatoes? Gregory asked, glancing down at my untouched capris. I nodded once. Just here for the paperwork. He slid a manila envelope across the table. His ring scraped the wood. Old school lawyer, real estate, trusts, estate protections. He wore a suit like it was part of his skin and spoke in complete legal clauses even when ordering pasta. We didn't make small talk. He didn't ask what Amanda had done. I didn't offer. Inside the envelope, revisions to my living trust. He'd flagged the changes in blue. Gregory hated digital ink. Page 3 updated the beneficiary structure, moving Amanda from primary to removed per directive. Page 4 updated healthcare proxy. Amanda's name erased, replaced with my sister's. Page 6 restructured the fallback distribution clause in case of marital dissolution or interpersonal estrangement. Gregory was always elegant with phrasing. Real estate assets, he asked. 2 under the veil, I said. Start with the building downtown and the upstate lot. Use the Nevada shell. He nodded, already scribbling. We didn't shake hands when I left. He just folded the envelope, tapped it against the table once, and went back to sipping his espresso. The kind of man who preferred endings that didn't require eye contact. Outside, I walked 2 blocks before taking a breath. The kind that fills you from the gut and then turns to ice by the time it hits your chest. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even smug. I was in motion now, and motion feels a lot like relief when you've been stuck playing the fool. Amanda texted around noon. A photo of an overpriced charcuterie board with the caption, Book Club Brunch. We're doing thrillers this month, LOL. The same 6 women with the same filtered smiles. The same hollow expressions underneath if you bothered to look past the teeth. I didn't respond. She was on a roll lately, hosting mixers, volunteering for committees, posting her boutique's discount codes like she was one Instagram story away from a TED Talk. She'd recently started calling herself a community tastemaker in her bios. I wasn't sure what that meant, but she said it with enough breathiness to make it sound important. She never asked where I was anymore. Never asked how work was. Probably thought I was stapling invoices or microwaving fish in some break room. I started arriving at the building early. Earlier than the tenants. Earlier than the maintenance crew. Just me and the morning light bleeding through the lobby windows. I met with the property management team first. Angela, who handled tenant relations, and Thomas, who looked like he had been born angry at zoning laws. We reviewed Amanda's boutique lease line by line. I pretended to ask questions I already knew the answers to. They didn't ask why I was suddenly interested in one tiny tenant on the 2nd floor. Angela flagged an interesting clause. Buried in the renewal section was a stipulation that allowed for immediate lease reevaluation pending ethical concerns detrimental to the commercial integrity of the property. Broad language. My favorite kind. Next, I checked security logs. Harmless stuff. Timestamps, entry fobs. Amanda's boutique manager had a habit of showing up late and clocking out early. I filed that away. That night, Amanda came home talking about a new sponsorship deal with a local candle brand. They want to do a pop-up. I'll need to ask my landlord for permission, she said, smirking as she kicked her heels off. I almost laughed. She meant me, but she didn't know that. Instead, I said, you should check your lease. She waved it off like a mosquito. Please, those guys never say no. At 10:13 p.m., I opened a new document on my laptop, Boutique Dissolution Draft. I didn't save it. Just left the tab open like a sleeping dog. I wanted to see it grow before I gave it a name. Amanda had started planning a girls' trip that week. Napa Valley, wine tastings, something about recentering and energy cleansing. The kind of escape people plan when they believe life will always be there, waiting, clean and untouched. I encouraged it. Smiled when she sent me Airbnb links. Said the break would be good for her. She thought it was generosity. It was clearance. I needed time without her in the apartment. Time without forced smiles and empty small talk about local influencers and Pinterest renovations. By the end of the week, Amanda had booked her ticket and posted the boarding pass on Instagram like she was a contestant on The Bachelor. She captioned it, "Self-care is the best revenge nail polish airplane wine glass." I didn't like it. I didn't comment. But I did screen capture it and add it to a folder titled, Exhibit A, Public Persona. Because when you prep a storm, it helps to catalog the clouds. It showed up on a Tuesday, buried between sponsored smoothie ads and a video of a dog rescuing a kitten. Amanda didn't tag me. Of course not. But one of her friends, Rachel, I think, posted a carousel from the rooftop party. Mostly filtered shots of cocktail glasses and skyline sunsets. But the last slide, the last one was a video. Just a few seconds long. Amanda, in a red dress she swore she'd never wear around my boring man, was holding a glass of rose and swaying a little too close to the edge of the railing. Laughter bubbled around her. She was mid-sentence, slurring slightly in that performative, confident way people get when they think the room is theirs. Mike's sweet, but painfully boring. she said, with that affected upward lilt she used when trying to sound casual and cruel at the same time. I mean, we all settle, right? The words weren't even what hit the hardest. It was her eyes. There was no doubt, no hesitation, just total, bored certainty. The laughter that followed was cruel in the way only rich, bored people can manage. They laughed like it was a known fact, something they'd all whispered about before and were now finally allowed to say out loud. One guy, sunburned, sloppy collar, added, "You could do so much better, babe." She giggled and mock curtsied. "Don't tell him I said that," she added with a wink. They all laughed harder. The video looped. I watched it 3 times. Not out of shock. Out of confirmation. It was the moment she shed the last mask. The moment she stopped pretending she respected me, even a little. The online version of Amanda always danced on the line. Friendly digs, performative sighs about men and their tiny feelings, subtle ways to position me as a charming doormat in her curated, filtered life. This clip didn't flirt with the line. It set it on fire. And people noticed. By Wednesday, it had racked up a few thousand views. Not viral by internet standards, but nuclear inside the microcosm of Amanda's world. Charity boards, brand collaborators, pseudo-feminist wine moms who used phrases like manifesting abundance while trashing their husbands over brunch. I didn't engage, didn't comment. I did forward the clip to one person, Calvin Mercer, my private investigator. Calvin wasn't the trench coat type. He looked like someone who sold car insurance door to door, which made him perfect for shadow work. We met 2 years ago when I needed a background check on a tenant who turned out to be running a cryptocurrency Ponzi scheme out of the 3rd floor. Since then, he's handled all my quiet verifications, backgrounds on vendors, unlisted marriages on applicants, that sort of thing. His reply was immediate. Calvin Mercer. Got it. Want eyes on her Napa trip? Me. Yes. Full itinerary. Discreet. Log all third-party interactions. Prioritize mail contacts and location overlaps. He responded with a thumbs-up emoji and a short, understood. That's all I needed. Amanda had left 2 days prior. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "Don't work too hard, Mr. Paper Pusher." That was the name she used when she was trying to flirt, mock, and dismiss me in one breath. I used to smile at it. Now it just sounded like someone dragging a chair across a marble floor. She landed in Napa Saturday morning. First stop, a high-end boutique resort with those eco-friendly cabins that somehow cost $900 a night. She posted a boomerang of the room key with the caption, "Peace and Pinot." The next slide was a mirror selfie in a robe. I didn't say anything. Just sent it to Calvin. By Sunday, he had photos. Her. Lounge chair. Poolside. A man with salt and pepper hair beside her. Not touching. Not obviously intimate. But leaning too close. Laughing too freely. A hand grazing hers for a little too long on the cocktail menu. Calvin labeled him. Unidentified male, 40s, wedding ring off. Appears familiar with subject. More photos followed. Dinner. Shared ride back to the resort. Both entering her suite. Time stamped. 11:43 p.m. I stared at that one for a while. Not because I needed confirmation. Because I needed documentation. There's a difference. Amanda posted a story the next morning, sunrise over the vineyard. She added a quote. Something about grapes becoming wine through pressure. She was always quoting things she didn't understand. I tapped the screen and let it slide away. No need to archive it. Calvin had already backed everything up to a private folder. Encrypted. Timestamped. Watermarked. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. This was about clarity. I looked over at the stack of documents on my desk. Lease contracts, ownership deeds, screenshots of text threads, receipts, my slow, methodical museum of her hypocrisy. And now video. You could argue it was petty, maybe even obsessive. But obsession is just preparation with a pulse. I opened a new folder on my drive. Phase 2 documentation. Then I renamed the video file, Mike_the_boring_clerk.mov. Because sometimes, it's the boring ones you need to worry about. The morning after the Napa photos landed in my inbox, I made myself a cup of coffee the way Amanda hates it. Black, burnt, thick as tar. She calls it serial killer coffee. I sipped it slow while the kettle still hissed behind me, then opened my laptop and clicked into a folder labeled simply, Intent. It wasn't dramatic. There were no shaking hands, no dramatic piano music in the background. Just the soft tap of keys, the hum of the fridge, and the familiar chill of quiet, strategic planning. The kind you feel in your teeth. I started with the dissolution notice. Legally, Amanda and I were co-signers on her boutique's launch. She needed my credit line and my boring office clerk reliability, as she put it, to secure the lease and initial funding. She used phrases like my dream, our future, and my personal favorite, you'll finally be part of something exciting. She said that while I was wiring her $42,000. The irony is, I was always part of something exciting. She just never thought to ask what. Now, I was writing the language that would remove me from her dream. Or, more precisely, remove her from mine. The auditor's report had arrived at 6:14 a.m. Calvin had a guy. Clean, fast, no questions. I'd asked for an itemized expense analysis for the past 6 months of Amanda's boutique operations. The file was only 6 pages, but each one read like a comedy script written by someone with a Gucci addiction and no concept of tax law. Line 22, $3,200. Business development dinner at a rooftop sushi bar in LA, 3 days after Amanda posted a selfie from the same place with the caption, no work, just vibes nail polish sparkles sushi. Line 43, $980. Hotel spa treatment listed under client engagement. Amanda had tagged herself in the whirlpool with the caption, treating myself because no one else will. Line 57, $218. Bottle service at a club. Description, event networking. Reality, she posted a story with the bottle lid on fire, her tongue out, and the song Material Girl blasting in the background. All of them were now highlighted and labeled inappropriate use of business funds. I took a pen and scratched a note in the margin, violation of fiduciary ethics, trigger threshold met. Then I started drafting the termination clause addendum. The boutique sat on the second floor of a building I owned, technically through the Shell LLC, but for all intents and purposes, it was mine. Amanda believed the landlord was a nameless property group in Jersey and had never once asked to meet them. She was too busy sending wine baskets to fake names and calling the super bro to get her lighting fixed. Clause 11B of her lease allowed for termination of tenancy upon verified breach of goodwill terms or damage to brand reputation impacting overall tenant harmony. Originally included because of a music producer tenant who once punched a DJ in the lobby. Now, it had a new purpose. I added an internal memo. Subject exhibits consistent pattern of behavior damaging to reputation of affiliated parties. Verified documentation includes public video defamation, misuse of business funds, and third-party conduct violations. Recommend lease reevaluation upon completion of Phase 2. I wasn't just preparing to remove Amanda from a property. I was preparing to remove her from the narrative she built around me. She'd crafted this image, Amanda, the self-made tastemaker with a boutique full of ethically sourced cardigans and empowering wall quotes. Behind her, a quiet little man who paid the bills and smiled for photos. She thought I was static. Background. Something she could crop out of the frame once she hit enough milestones. But here's the thing about backgrounds. They're foundational. Without them, the whole picture collapses. I didn't hit send. Not yet. Timing mattered. Letting her trip end on a high note would make the fall sharper. Letting her re-enter her curated life, her influencer posts, her iced oat milk lattes, her smug little group texts where I was the invisible assistant, would lull her into thinking the game was still hers. She needed to feel safe again, unbothered, in control, because when someone believes they've already won, they stop watching their footing. And that's when the floor disappears. I closed the file and saved it as LOI_draft_final.docs. A bit of an oxymoron, sure, but lawyers love their hedges. Then I took a deep breath and leaned back in my chair. Amanda was due back in 3 days. Just enough time for her to post a carousel of vineyard sunsets and vaguely feminist captions about new beginnings. Let her. I was writing mine too, but mine ended differently. Amanda wasn't supposed to be home until Sunday night. But at 11:42 a.m. on Saturday, the front door clicked open. I didn't flinch. I was sitting on the couch, laptop in my lap, calmly reviewing a lease addendum for a tech startup I'd just approved on the 3rd floor. A red wine stain from Amanda's vision board night still marked the corner of the coffee table. I'd never bothered to clean it. Seemed fitting to let the ink of her ambitions bleed wherever they landed. Hey, she called out, setting her roller bag down with a thud. Trip got cut short. Molly had a meltdown, dumped her guy, started crying into the rose, totally ruined the energy. She leaned into the hallway mirror, adjusting her hair with one hand, swiping at invisible mascara smudges with the other. Her tan was uneven. I noticed because she hated that. I closed my laptop without looking rushed. Oh, I said, that's too bad. She glanced over at me, eyes darting slightly too quickly, like she was checking for something. Accusation? Suspicion? I didn't give her any. I gave her air. She peeled off her cardigan and tossed it on the chair I used for my morning coffee. Then she stopped, turned to me, and said, "You're quiet." "Just working," I replied. "It's been a busy week." She snorted. "Paper clips in high demand." I smiled. Not warmly. "Actually," I said, "we're moving floors." She blinked. "You're what?" "My office. The building. Management's relocating our suite to the top floor. Better view. New setup." Amanda cocked her head, confused for a beat. Then the sarcasm clicked back into place like muscle memory. "Wow," she said, drawing the word out. "Cubicle upgrade. You'll finally get a swivel chair and a window." She grinned. That smug, eyelash-fluttering expression she used when she thought she was being playfully cruel. I used to mistake it for flirting. I nodded. "Yeah, big moves." She laughed, then reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. "God, you should have seen the pool at this place. Like, stupidly gorgeous. You'd have loved it." I bet I would have. Especially the part where she sipped margaritas while some tan, gold chain-wearing ghost of a man grazed her thigh in full view of the Cabana cameras. I didn't say that, of course. I just raised an eyebrow and said, "You seem tense. Everything okay?" She hesitated. The pause was so small, you'd miss it if you weren't trained to look for it. "I'm just tired," she said. "Being around all that emotional drama drains me." I nodded, leaned forward, and grabbed my coffee mug from the table. It had cooled. I drank it anyway. She sat across from me, curling her legs under her like she used to do when we first moved in together, trying to summon intimacy on command. Manufactured closeness. I watched her eyes scan the room. Her gaze landed briefly on the file folder I had tucked beneath a stack of magazines. She didn't ask what it was. She never asked about files. "Anything new with the boutique?" I asked innocently. "Oh yeah, actually. While we were there, I met a woman who runs this little fashion collective in Sausalito. She wants to do a crossover thing, like sustainable, boho, West Coast meets minimalist New York. She said I have the perfect vibe for it. Sounds lucrative." She smirked. "It's not about the money. It's about impact." Of course it was. She didn't know the boutique was already under audit, that the lease termination notice was dated and sitting quietly in my drafts folder, that the independent review of her business expenses had been uploaded into a shared drive and labeled final. Amanda didn't know I'd already restructured the ownership entity of the property she worked out of, or that I'd filed a preliminary report citing breach of contract under goodwill terms, based on her rooftop video alone. What she did notice was the silence. I wasn't pushing. I wasn't asking. I wasn't reacting. And that, more than anything, made her nervous. She stood suddenly. "I'm gonna go shower. I feel gross." I smiled again. "Take your time." She disappeared down the hall, the sound of her phone buzzing in her hand. I imagined it was her friend Molly, rehashing the breakup. Or maybe the man from the pool. Calvin had never confirmed his identity. He didn't need to. The footage was clear enough. The moment she was out of view, I reached beneath the magazines and pulled out the file. Printed on the front was a single post-it. "Wait for confirmation." Underlined twice. I didn't need a confession. I didn't need a fight. I needed her to believe nothing had changed, that the floor beneath her was still solid. Because people don't panic when the earthquake hits. They panic when the floor should have been there and isn't. It happened on a Wednesday. The boutique had just opened for the day. Amanda was standing behind the front counter, tapping through her iPad like she was curing global warming one overpriced scented throw at a time. Her assistant, Kayla, a part-time fashion student with a lip ring and terminal lateness, was arranging a new batch of pastel sweaters on the mannequin by the window. That's when the card declined. Amanda was trying to pay for a batch order of eucalyptus-infused candles from a supplier she insisted was the next diptyque. A $1,150 order. Routine stuff. She swiped our joint card and watched the screen freeze for a half-beat too long. Declined. She blinked, confused. She tried again. Declined. This time with a chime. Kayla looked over. Connection issue? Amanda frowned, opened her banking app. It took a moment to load, then another moment for her to process what she saw. The shared account, our account, was gone. Not empty. Gone. As if it had never existed. The card itself was still listed in her wallet, but Mike Carter was no longer associated with it. Just her name. Alone. She tried to transfer funds from savings, but the linked account showed zero. No error message. No fraud alert. Just emptiness. She stared at it, lips parted slightly, then blinked rapidly like maybe the app just hadn't refreshed. Back at home, I was standing over the kitchen sink, watching the espresso machine finish its cycle. The faint hiss of steamed milk curling up into silence. My phone vibrated twice. Amanda, did you change something? The joint card isn't working. Amanda, also, where's the savings? I didn't respond right away. Let her stew. Let her scroll through every app, every backup card, every plan B she didn't realize was always a plan Mike. She came home 2 hours early. The boutique posted a closed for inventory sign. First time I'd seen her flustered enough to cancel a day of performative entrepreneurship. The door slammed harder than usual. Mike. I looked up from the dining table. Legal pad open. Lease review in progress. Calm as still water. She dropped her bag on the floor. What the hell is going on? The card was declined. The savings account, our savings, is missing. And my Stripe deposit bounced. I marked a paragraph in my pad and looked at her. Moving forward, I said, all boutique-related expenses will be billed through lease management, like the other tenants. She blinked. What? I repeated it. Slower. Colder. She opened her mouth, then shut it, then opened it again. What the hell are you talking about, tenants? I reached over to the corner of the table and picked up a single page, the updated lease management memo I drafted 2 days earlier. I slid it across the table toward her. Amanda stared at it, but didn't pick it up. She looked back at me. You're, what? Consulting with the property group now. I smiled, tight and measured. No, Amanda. I am the property group. Her brow furrowed. I own the building. Through a management LLC I established years ago. The one your boutique rents from. The silence after that felt long enough to echo. She took a step back. You're the landlord? I nodded. Since before you signed the lease. Since before you called me reliable enough to co-sign your dream. She sat, slowly, like the chair might disappear under her. I don't understand, she whispered. You never asked, I replied. You assumed. She tried to laugh. A brittle, broken sound. But we had joint decisions. We had accounts. I slid another document across the table. Proof of legal separation of funds, all withdrawn and reallocated into a protected corporate account, one tied to my LLC. Unbreakable by her unless she wanted to go toe-to-toe with a 4-year trail of compliance. It was never personal, I said softly. Just policy. You're a tenant now. Same as everyone else. She stared down at the documents, lips trembling slightly. Her mouth opened again, no words forming. Don't worry, I added, pouring myself another espresso. You're not being evicted. Yet. She looked up. I met her eyes. But I double-check Clause 11B before you post any more stories about how painfully boring I am. The blood drained from her face. And still, she didn't ask about Napa. She still thought the ground crumbling beneath her feet was her own fault. She didn't know yet. It wasn't. It was mine. Amanda showed up on a Thursday. It was a sunny morning, clear blue sky, no wind, the kind of day influencers pretend is every day. I'd already had 2 back-to-back meetings and was finalizing a lease offer with a media startup interested in the 3rd floor. I wore my navy blazer. Not because I expected her, but because Thursdays were investor visit days, and I liked looking like the man she thought didn't exist. At 10:12 a.m., the building receptionist, Monica, buzzed me. Mr. Carter, she said, her voice calm and professional. Your guest has arrived. Is she carrying anything? No, she said, a tiny pause. Just a purse and that look. That look, you'll know what I mean. I smiled. Send the envelope. Amanda, meanwhile, was in the lobby adjusting her jacket in the mirrored elevator door. She'd chosen carefully. A muted beige trench, oversized sunglasses, heels that screamed, I'm not intimidated, but creaked slightly from lack of recent wear. Her boutique sales had dipped hard since the boring video went semi-viral, and rumors about a lease dispute were already circling her charity groups. Still, she was confident enough to think she could win this. That it was just a conversation. She was even rehearsing lines in her head. Something sarcastic. Something that would make me squirm a little, then laugh. A jab about power trips, about me finally growing a spine. Maybe a joke about clipboard authority. She imagined herself delivering it with a half smile and walking out smug. Maybe even posting a coy Instagram story on the elevator ride down. Instead, as she approached the front desk, Monica stood and greeted her with perfect customer service calm. Good morning. Name. Amanda removed her sunglasses slowly. Amanda Greer. Monica smiled politely. Yes, of course. One moment. She turned, opened a drawer, and pulled out a sealed white envelope with Amanda G. printed in sharp, clean black letters. He asked me to give you this personally. Amanda hesitated. He's not coming down? Monica shook her head. Mr. Carter is in meetings. He said you'd understand. Amanda took the envelope like it might explode in her hands. She turned toward the elevators, but didn't press the button. Instead, she stood by the glass wall facing the atrium and opened the flap with manicured fingers that trembled just slightly. Not enough for a stranger to notice, but enough. Inside was a single, folded document. Printed at the top, lease termination notice, Suite 204. Effective immediately, due to multiple violations of Lease Clause 11B. Attached, digital evidence, expense reports, and breach of goodwill documentation, including a notarized transcript of the rooftop video and the financial misuse flagged by independent auditors. All confirmed. All time-stamped. The second page was colder. A formal severance of all personal financial entanglements, citing misrepresentation, reputational damage, and cause. At the bottom of the page, in clean serif font, was one final sentence. Any questions may be directed to the property's legal representative. Mr. Carter is no longer available for informal conversations. Beneath it was a postscript. Handwritten. Just an office clerk. Amanda didn't cry. Not yet. She looked up, saw Monica watching her politely, and gave a brittle smile. Could I, just for a second, go upstairs? Monica's expression didn't change. I'm sorry, Ms. Greer. Access is for tenants only. Amanda's lips parted. She started to argue, then stopped. Something in Monica's tone, no hostility, no apology, made it clear. This wasn't personal. This was procedure. She turned toward the elevator anyway, driven by habit, by memory, by the part of her brain still insisting that this was a misunderstanding. She reached for the button. It didn't light up. She pressed it again. Nothing. Behind her, Monica said, Ms. Greer, your access has been removed. Amanda turned. What? This building requires digital key authorization for non-public floors. Yours was deactivated this morning. Amanda stood frozen, envelope still clutched in her hand. She turned slowly and looked up through the glass atrium toward the 5th floor. The top floor. There, behind a wall of tinted windows, she could barely make out the silhouette of a man standing beside two others in suits. He was gesturing toward something, maybe a blueprint, maybe the model for a new floor plan. He was calm, focused. He didn't look down. He didn't need to. Amanda took one step back from the elevator and nearly stumbled. Her shoes suddenly felt too high, the trench coat too warm, the envelope too heavy. She didn't know what to do with her hands, whether to tear the document or hide it or scream or laugh. She did none of those things. She walked out. Outside, the world was still bright. Too bright. Her phone buzzed in her purse. Kayla, probably, wondering why the boutique's rent payment had bounced. Amanda didn't answer. She just stood on the sidewalk, envelope tucked under her arm, sunglasses back on her face, blinking against the glare as the weight of everything she assumed finally began to shift. The envelope's paper was thicker than she expected. That kind of formal stock weight that tells you, before a single word's read, that something inside is final. Not an invitation. Not a conversation starter. A verdict. Amanda walked to the far corner of the lobby, heels clicking too loud against the marble, and sat stiffly on a leather bench under a fake ficus tree. The receptionist had already returned to her computer, typing away like none of this was unusual. Like this lobby saw people unravel all the time. She slipped one manicured finger under the flap and opened it. The first page had a seal at the top, Carter Property Holdings, LLC. She froze. That name. She'd seen it before. On her boutique lease, buried in the fine print, under lessor entity. She always assumed it was one of those shell groups that managed a dozen buildings at once. Nothing personal. Just real estate machinery. Except now she knew exactly who stood behind that curtain. Mike. Her Mike. The one she told people stapled reports for a living. The one she described as low maintenance. The one she reduced to a prop in her carefully staged life. The headline was clear: lease termination, effective immediately. Citing Clause 11B, breach of goodwill, public defamation of property owner, and conduct detrimental to property reputation. Amanda's heart pounded against her ribcage, slow at first, then faster as her eyes skimmed the document. She barely processed the middle, something about redevelopment, an offer to collect remaining inventory within 14 days, a waiver of deposit refund due to contract violation. Then her eyes landed on the stapled second page. A printed transcript. From a video. Her video. Amanda, voice slightly slurred, holding court over overpriced rose. Mike's sweet, but painfully boring. I mean, we all settle, right? Highlighted. Labeled. Exhibit A, breach of goodwill. Subsection, verifiable public defamation of property owner. She felt the blood drain from her face. The third page was worse. It wasn't about the boutique. It was about everything else. A formal notice of dissolution, personal and financial. Revocation of shared financial authority. Confirmation that all joint accounts had been legally restructured. Amanda's access to credit lines, nullified. Savings accounts, removed. Emergency contacts, updated. Per the attached financial audit, your business expenditures no longer qualify under the initial co-signed terms. Mr. Carter is no longer listed as a guarantor or legal associate of Amanda Greer, effective immediately. And there it was. A line at the bottom, separate, underlined, its own little island of finality. Postscript, just an office clerk. The words hit harder than anything else. Not because they were cruel, but because she knew exactly where they came from. She had said it, thought it was clever. A throwaway insult at a rooftop party. And now there it was. Laminated in humiliation. Quoted like gospel. Weaponized with surgical precision. Amanda stared down at the papers in her lap, hands shaking now, slightly. Not enough to draw attention, but enough to make the pages rattle like leaves caught in the wrong season. She looked around the lobby, suddenly aware of how exposed she was. How bright the lighting was. How far away the elevator stood. The fake ficus beside her looked like it was mocking her. Her boutique. Gone. Her access to funds. Gone. Her illusion of control. Shattered. She'd built an entire identity on the assumption that she was the one with options. That she could smile through anything. Curate, influence, position. That Mike was safe. Her reliable, spineless fallback. The man who would never leave because he didn't know how. She never imagined he'd strike. Never imagined he was capable of it. Because she never looked. Not really. She texted him once. Then again. Nothing. She called. Straight to voicemail. She looked up toward the 5th floor, trying to see through the tinted glass, but all she caught was the faint outline of movement, shadows behind frosted privacy. Then her phone buzzed. A text from Kayla. Kayla. Stripe just froze the account. Are we closing? Amanda stared at the screen. No reply. Then came another buzz. Unknown number. Your lease has been flagged by our legal team. Do not attempt re-entry into Suite 204 without written approval. She felt her throat tighten. A pressure behind her eyes, but no tears came. Not yet. There was one final page folded in the envelope. She opened it with dread. It was handwritten, on heavy stationery. Amanda, I didn't need to expose you publicly. You already did that yourself. This was never about revenge. It was about correction. Consider it a reset. Best. Mike. Still sweet. Just not stupid. Amanda folded the paper back into the envelope with slow, precise hands. She stood, adjusted her coat, and walked out of the building without looking back. Outside, the street noise hit her like a wall. She didn't know where to go, because the place she thought she owned, the one she curated, managed, and called her empire, had never belonged to her at all. Amanda called 3 times before she even left the sidewalk. Once while pacing in front of a planter box, once mid-step as she crossed the lobby threshold, and once from inside the elevator vestibule, each ring louder in her ear than the last, each voicemail colder. He never picked up. Mike, pick up the damn phone. She hissed into the speaker on the 3rd try. You made your point. Just call me. Now. Her voice cracked at the edge of now, but she hit end before it could bleed. The building's elevator panel blinked. Floor access restricted. Authorized tenants only. She waved her card. Nothing. She pressed the call button. No chime. The polished steel door stayed shut like a vault. Then came the voice, smooth and apologetic. Ms. Greer. She turned. Security. Young guy, polite, in a blazer and earpiece. Clearly instructed to be firm but professional. I'm going up, she snapped. I'm afraid you don't have access anymore, he said, not unkindly. I know that. I'm telling you to override it. I can't do that. Mr. Carter specified access revocation under emergency protocols. I can notify reception, but... Amanda stepped forward, low voice, furious. Listen to me. I built my life here. That man up there is my fiancé. Or he was. Whatever this is, it's a mistake. I need to speak with him. The guard didn't move. I'm sorry, ma'am. She took one breath. 2. Tried to collect herself, fix her posture, smooth her coat. It wasn't until she turned slightly, toward the lobby's center atrium, that she saw him. Through the glass partition on the 5th floor. Mike. Calm. Standing beside 2 lawyers in tailored suits. Gesturing at blueprints splayed out over a glass table. Laughing at something one of them said. His expression, focused, alert, alive. He didn't glance down. He didn't break stride. He didn't acknowledge her. Amanda stared up at him, stunned, as if trying to force his gaze through sheer will. A woman approached from the far side of the floor, Angela, the property manager. She handed Mike a tablet. He nodded, pointed toward a mock-up of a new suite layout on the screen. The legal team circled around him like executives around a founder. He looked like a man at home, not in someone else's empire. His own. Amanda stepped back from the glass. She turned, slowly. The lobby behind her looked too bright, too loud. The fake ficus tree by the bench now felt like a mocking prop from a sitcom no one was laughing at. She walked toward the exit. Not briskly, not in defeat, just walking, like someone caught in a storm they couldn't name yet. Her heels tapped out in erratic rhythm against the floor. Outside, traffic blurred past. Sunlight hit the windows too harshly. Her phone buzzed. She yanked it from her bag. Bank notification. Business account suspended pending formal audit. Access temporarily restricted. Contact your relationship manager. She froze. Another buzz. Text from attorney Clark Reynolds. Amanda, we need to talk. Now. Urgent. Then another. Stripe notification. Payouts paused due to legal flags on registered business entity. And another. DM from at Retail Ethics Board. We are aware of recent claims and have initiated review of your boutique certification. Please respond within 72 hours. She stared at the screen, numb fingers curling around the edges. The world she had built on curated photos, filtered videos, borrowed confidence, and Mike's silent loyalty was unraveling. He had never raised his voice, never posted a rant, never clapped back. He had simply waited, watched, and built the exit while she mocked the man hammering the door. Amanda stood motionless on the curb, envelope still clutched under one arm, the street noise fading around her. Somewhere behind her, a delivery van honked. A woman cursed into a Bluetooth earpiece. A street musician's saxophone groaned out an off-key Moon River. But all Amanda could hear was the echo of her own words from that rooftop party. I mean, we all settle, right? Wrong. He didn't settle. He planned. And she never saw it coming.